Then the world-honored one told all those in assembly who were great bodhisattvas and great arahants, their outflows extinguished. All of you bodhisattvas and arahats who are born from within my dharma and have attained the stage beyond learning, I now ask you, when you first brought forth your resolve and become enlightened to the 18 realms, which one of these brought perfect penetration? Through which expedient did you enter samadhi? Kundanya, with the others of the 5 bhikshus, arose from his seat, bowed at the Buddha's feet, and said to the Buddha, "When I was in the deer park and the peasant garden, I observed the thus come one immediately after his accomplishment of the way. Upon hearing the Buddha's voice, I understood the 4 truths. The Buddha asked us bhikshus to speak. I was the first to understand, and the thus come one certified me and named me Ajnata. His wonderful sound was both secret and all-pervasive. It was through sound that I became an arhat. The Buddha asks about perfect penetration. As I've been certified to it, sound is the superior means." Upanishad arose from his seat, bowed at the Buddha's feet, and said to the Buddha, "I also saw the Buddha when he first accomplished the way. I learned to contemplate the appearance of impurity until I grew to loathe it and came to understand that the nature of all form is unclean. Bare bones and subtle dust all return to emptiness, and so both emptiness and form are done away with. With this realization, I accomplished the path beyond learning. The thus come one certified me and named me Upanishad. The object of form came to an end, and wonderful form was both secret and all-pervasive. Thus, it was through the appearance of form that I became an arhat. The Buddha asks about perfect penetration. As I have been certified to it, form is the superior means." The pure youth, adorned with fragrance, arose from his seat, bowed at the Buddha's feet, and said to the Buddha, "I heard the thus come one teach me to contemplate attentively all conditioned appearances. After I heard the Buddha's instruction, I sat in repose in the quiet of a pure dwelling. When I saw the bhikshus light sinking incense, the fragrant scent quietly entered my nostrils. I contemplated this fragrance. It did not come from the wood. It did not come from emptiness. It did not come from the smoke, and it did not come from the fire. There was no place it came from, and no place it went to. Because of this, my discriminating mind was dispelled, and I attained the absence of outflows. The thus come one certified me, and called me adorned with fragrance. Defiling scent certainly vanished, and wonderful fragrance was both secret and all-pervasive. It was through the adornment of fragrance that I became an arhat. The Buddha asks about perfect penetration. As I have been certified to it, the adornment of fragrance is the superior means. The 2 Dharma princes, physician king and superior physician, and 500 Brahma gods in assembly arose from their seats, bowed at the Buddha's feet, and said to the Buddha, "From beginningless kalpas until now, we have been good doctors for the world. In our mouths we have tasted many herbs, wood, metals, and stones of the Saha world, 108,000 flavors. We know in detail the bitter, sour, salty, bland, sweet, and pungent flavors and the like. In all their combinations and inherent changes, we have a thorough knowledge of whether they be cooling or warming, poisonous or non-poisonous. While serving the thus come one, we came to know that the nature of flavors is not empty and is not existent, nor is it the body or mind, nor is it apart from body and mind. We became enlightened by discriminating among flavors. The Daskam One sealed and certified us brothers and named us as Bodhisattvas, Physician King and Superior Physician. Now in the assembly, we are Dharma princes who have ascended the Bodhisattva level because we became enlightened by means of flavors. The Buddha asks about perfect penetration. As we have been certified to it, the cause of flavors is the superior means. Bhadrapala and 16 awakened lords who were his companions arose from their seats and bowed at the Buddha's feet. He said to the Buddha, "We first heard the Dharma and left the home life under King of Awesome Sound Buddha. Once, when it was time for the Sangha to bathe, I followed the custom and entered the bathhouse. Suddenly I awakened to the fact that water does not wash away the dust, nor does it cleanse the body. At that point, between the two, I became peaceful, and I attained the state of there being nothing at all. To this day, I've never forgotten that past experience. Having left home with the Buddha, I've gone beyond learning. That Buddha named me Bhadrapala. Wonderful touch was revealed, and I accomplished the position of the Buddha's disciples. The Buddha asks about perfect penetration. As I have been certified to it, touch is a superior means. Mahakashyapa, purple golden light Bhikshuni, and others arose from their seats, bowed at the Buddha's feet, and said to the Buddha, "In the past kalpa in this region, I drew near to the Buddha named Sun Moon Lam, who was then in the world. I heard Dharma from him and cultivated and studied with him. After that Buddha's extinction, I made offerings to his sharira and lit lamps to continue his light. Purple golden light gilded the Buddha's image. From that time on, in life after life, my body has always been perfect and has shone with a purple golden light. The Bhikshuni purple golden light and others make up my retinue, and we all brought forth the resolve for Bodhi at the same time. I contemplated that the world's six sense objects change and decay. They are but empty stillness. Based on this, I cultivated extinction. Now my body and mind can pass through hundreds of thousands of kalpas as though they were a finger snap. Based on the emptiness of mental constructs, I accomplish our hardship. The World-Honored One says that I am foremost in dutta practices. Wonderful Dharma brought me awakening and understanding, and I extinguished all outflows. The Buddha asks about perfect penetration. As I've certified to it, mental constructs are the superior means. Aniruddha arose from his seat, bowed at the Buddha's feet, and said to the Buddha, "When I first left home, I was fond of sleeping all the time. The Daskam One scolded me and said I was no better than an animal. When I heard the Buddha's scolding, I wept and upbraided myself. For 7 days I did not sleep, and I lost the sight in both my eyes. The World-Honored One taught me the Vajra Samadhi of the delightful seeing, which illumines and is bright. Although I had no eyes, I could contemplate the 10 directions with true and penetrating clarity, just as if I were looking at a piece of fruit in the palm of my hand. The Daskam One certified me as having attained arhatship. The Buddha asks about perfect penetration. As I've been certified to it, returning the seeing back to its source is the foremost method. Kudrapantaka arose from his seat bowed at the Buddha's feet and said to the Buddha, I'm deficient in the ability to memorize and do not have much innate intelligence. When I first met the Buddha, I heard the Dharma and left the home life. But when I tried to remember one line of a verse by the Das Kam One, I went through 100 days remembering the first part and forgetting the last, or remembering the last and forgetting the first. The Buddha took pity on my stupidity and taught me to relax and regulate my breathing. I contemplated my breath thoroughly to the subtle point in which arising, dwelling, change, and extinction happen in every kshana. My mind suddenly attained vast non-obstruction until my outflows were extinguished and I accomplished arhatship. Beneath the Buddha's seat, I was sealed and certified as being beyond learning. The Buddha asks about perfect penetration, as I have been certified to it. Turning the breath back to emptiness is a foremost method. Gavampati arose from his seat, bowed at the Buddha's feet, and said to the Buddha, I have much karma created from the past offense. I slighted a Shramana, and in life after life, I've had this cow-curd sickness. The Das Kam One taught me the mind-ground Dharma door of the purity of a single flavor. My thought was extinguished. I entered Samadhi and contemplated the awareness of flavor as not having a substance and not being a thing. As a result, my mind transcended all worldly outflows. Internally, I was freed of body and mind, and externally, I abandoned the world. I left the three existences far behind, just like a bird released from its cage. I separated from filth and wiped out defilements, and so my Dharma eye became pure, and I accomplished arhatship. The Das Kam One certified me in person as having ascended to the path beyond learning. The Buddha asks about perfect penetration, as I've been certified to it. Returning flavor and turning awareness around is the superior method. Pilindavatsa arose from his seat, bowed at the Buddha's feet, and said to the Buddha, When I first left home to follow the Buddha and entered the way, I often heard the Das Kam One explain that there is nothing in this world that brings happiness. Once when I was begging in the city, I was reflecting on this Dharma door and did not notice a poisonous thorn on the road until it had pricked my foot. My entire body experienced physical pain, but my mind also had an awareness, though it was aware of strong pain and recognized the feeling of pain. I knew that in my pure heart there was neither pain nor awareness of pain. I also thought, is it possible for one body to have two awarenesses? Having reflected on this for a while, my body and mind were suddenly empty. After 21 days, my outflows disappeared. I accomplished arahantship and received certification in person and a confirmation that I had realized the level beyond learning. The Buddha asks about perfect penetration. As I've been certified to it, purifying the awareness and forgetting the body is the superior method. Subhuti arose from his seat, bowed at the Buddha's feet, and said to the Buddha, From distant kalpas until now, my mind has been unobstructed. I remember as many as my past lives as there are sands in the Ganges River. From the beginning, in my mother's womb, I knew emptiness and tranquillity, to the extent that the 10 directions became empty, and I caused living beings to be certified to the nature of emptiness. Having received the Das Kam One's revelation that the enlightened nature is true emptiness, that the nature of emptiness is perfect and bright, I attained arhatship and certainly entered into the thus come one sea of magnificent, bright emptiness. With knowledge and views identical with the Buddha, I was certified as being beyond learning. In the liberation of the nature of emptiness, I am unsurpassed. The Buddha asks about perfect penetration. As I have been certified to it, all appearances enter into nothingness. Nothingness and what becomes nothingness both disappear. Turning phenomena back to the void is the foremost method. Shariputra arose from his seat, bowed at the Buddha's feet, and said to the Buddha, "From distant kalpas until the present, my mind and views have been pure. In this way, I have undergone as many births as there are grains of sand in the Ganges. As to the various transformations and changes of both the mundane and the transcendental, I am able to understand them at one glance and obtain non-obstruction. Once I met the Kashyapis on the road, and I walked along with the brothers. They spoke about causes and conditions, and I awakened to the boundlessness of my mind. I followed the Buddha and left the home life. My seeing awareness became bright and perfect. I obtained fearlessness and became an arhat. As one of the Buddha's eldest disciples, I am born from the Buddha's mouth, transformationally born from the Dharma." The Buddha asks about perfect penetration. As I have been certified to it, for the mind and the seeing to emit light, and for the light to reach throughout knowing and seeing is a foremost method. Universal worthy Bodhisattva arose from his seat, bowed at the Buddha's feet, and said to the Buddha, "I have been a Dharma prince with as many thus come ones as there are sands in the Ganges. The thus come ones of the 10 directions tell their disciples who have the roots of a Bodhisattva to cultivate universal worthy conduct, which is named after me. World-honored one, I use my mind to listen and distinguish the knowledge and views of living beings. In other regions as many realms away as there are sands in the Ganges, if there is any living being who discovers the conduct of universal worthy, I immediately mount my 6-tusked elephant and create hundreds of thousands of reduplicated bodies which go to those places. Although their obstacles may be so heavy that they do not see me, I secretly rub their crowns, protect and comfort them, and help them be successful." The Buddha asks about perfect penetration. The basic cause I speak of in my case is listening with the mind to discover and distinguish at ease. This is the foremost method. Sundarananda arose from his seat, bowed at the Buddha's feet, and said to the Buddha, "When I first left home and followed the Buddha to enter the way, I received the complete precepts, but my mind was always too scattered for samadhi, and I could not attain the state of having no outflows. The world-honored one taught Kastila and me to contemplate the white spot at the tip of our noses. From the first, I contemplated intently. After 3 weeks, I saw that the breath in my nostrils looked like smoke when I inhaled and exhaled. My body and mind became bright inside, and I perfectly understood the external world to the point that everything became empty and pure, like crystal. The smoky appearance gradually disappeared, and the breath in my nostrils became white. My mind opened, and my outflows were extinguished. Every inhalation and exhalation of breath was transformed into light, which illumined the 10 directions, and I attained arhatship. The world-honored one predicted that in the future I would obtain Bodhi." The Buddha asks about perfect penetration. I did it by means of the disappearance of the breath, until eventually the breath emitted light, and the light completely extinguished my outflows. This is the foremost method. Purna Maitriyani Putra arose from his seat, bowed at the Buddha's feet, and said to the Buddha, "For vast kalpas, I have possessed unobstructed eloquence. When I discuss suffering and emptiness, I penetrate deeply into the actual appearance, and in the same way, I give subtle, wonderful instruction to the assembly concerning the secret Dharma doors of as many thus come ones as their sands in the Ganges. I have also obtained fearlessness. The world-honored one knew that I had great eloquence, and so he made use of my voice in turning the wheel of the Dharma. He taught me how to disseminate it. I joined the Buddha to help him turn the wheel. I accomplished arahatship through the lion's roar. The world-honored one certified me as being foremost in speaking Dharma. The Buddha asks about perfect penetration. I use the sound of Dharma to subdue demons and adversaries and melt away my outflows. This is the foremost method. Upali arose from his seat, bowed at the Buddha's feet, and said to the Buddha, "I followed the Buddha in person when he fled the city and left the home life. I observed the thus come one endure 6 years of diligent asceticism. I watched the thus come one subdue all the demons, control adherents of external paths, and become liberated from all outflows, which were based on worldly desire and greed. I based myself on the Buddha's teaching of precepts, encompassing the 3,000 awesome departments and the 80,000 subtle aspects. Both my direct karma and my contributing karma became pure. My body and mind became tranquil, and I accomplished arahatship. In the thus come one's assembly, I am a governor of the law. The Buddha himself certified my mind's upholding of the precepts and my genuine cultivation of them. I am considered a leader of the assembly. The Buddha asks about perfect penetration. I disciplined the body until the body attained ease and comfort. Then I disciplined the mind until the mind attained penetrating clarity. After that, the body and mind experienced keen and thorough absorption. This is the foremost method. Great Moggallana arose from his seat, bowed at the Buddha's feet, and said to the Buddha, "Once when I was out on the road begging for food, I met the 3 Kashyapa brothers, Uruvela, Gaya, and Nadi, who proclaimed for me the thus come one's profound principle of causes and conditions. I immediately brought forth resolve and obtained a great understanding. The thus come one accepted me, and the Kashaya was on my body, and my hair fell out by itself. I roamed in the 10 directions, having no impeding obstructions. I discovered my spiritual penetrations, which are esteemed as unsurpassed, and I accomplished arahatship. Not only the world-honored one, but the thus come ones of the 10 directions praise my spiritual powers as perfectly clear and pure, masterful and fearless. The Buddha asks about perfect penetration. By means of a spiral-like attention to the profound, the light of my mind was revealed, just as muddy water clears. Eventually, it became pure and dazzling. This is the foremost method. Uchushuma came before the Buddha, put his palms together, bowed at the Buddha's feet, and said to the Buddha, "I can still remember how many kalpas ago I was filled with excessive greed and desire. There was a Buddha in the world named King of Emptiness. He said that people with too much desire turned into a raging mass of fire. He taught me to contemplate the coolness and warmth throughout my entire body. A spiritual light coalesced inside and transformed my thoughts of excessive lust into the fire of wisdom. After that, when any of the Buddhas summoned me, they used the name Firehead. From the strength of the firelight samadhi, I accomplished arahatship. I made a great vow that when each of the Buddhas accomplishes the way, I'll be a powerful knight and in person subdue the demon's hatred. The Buddha asks about perfect penetration. I used attentive contemplation of the effects of heat in my body and mind until it became unobstructed and penetrating, and all my outflows were consumed. I produced a blazing brilliance and ascended to enlightenment. This is the foremost method. The Bodhisattva, maintaining the ground, arose from his seat, bowed at the Buddha's feet and said to the Buddha, I remember when universal light thus come one appeared in the world in the past. I was a bhikshu who continually worked on making level the major roads, ferry landings, and the dangerous spots in the ground, where the disrepair might hinder or harm carriages or horses. I did everything from building bridges to hauling sand. I was diligent in this hard labor throughout the appearance of limitless Buddhas in the world. If there were beings at the walls and gates of the cities who needed someone to carry their goods, I would carry them all the way to their destination, set the things down, and leave without taking any recompense. When the Buddha Vipassana appeared in the world, there was a worldwide famine. I would carry people on my back, and no matter how far the distance, I would only accept one small coin. If there was an ox cart stuck in the mud, I would use my spiritual strength to push the wheels and get it out of difficulty. Once a king asked the Buddha to accept a vegetarian feast. At that time, I served the Buddha by leveling the road as he went. Vipassana thus come one, rubbed my crown and said, You should level your mind ground, then everything else in the world would be level. Immediately, my mind opened up, and I saw that the particles of earth composing my own body were no different from all the particles of earth that made up the world. The nature of those particles of dust was such that they did not connect with one another, nor could they be touched by the blade of a sword. Within the Dharma nature, I awakened to the patience with the non-existence of beings and phenomena, and accomplished arahatship. I brought my mind back to the extent that I have now entered the ranks of the bodhisattvas. Hearing the Thus Come One proclaim the wonderful lotus flower, the level of the Buddha's knowledge and vision, I have already been certified as having understood and am a leader in the assembly. The Buddha asks about perfect penetration. Upon attentive contemplation of the body and the environment, I saw that these two dusts are exactly the same, that fundamentally everything is a treasury of the Thus Come One, but that an empty falseness arises and creates the dust. When the dust is eliminated, wisdom is perfected, and one accomplishes the unsurpassed way. This is the foremost method. The pure youth Moonlight arose from his seat, bowed at the Buddha's feet, and said to the Buddha, I remember that long ago, beyond kalpas as many as there are sands in the Ganges, there was a Buddha in the world named Water God, who taught all the bodhisattvas to cultivate the contemplation of water and enter samadhi. I reflected upon how throughout the body the essence of water is not in discord. I started with mucus and saliva, and went on through digestive juices, phlegm, semen, blood, to urine and excrement. As it revolved through my body, the nature of water was identical. I saw that the water in my body was not at all different from that in the world outside, even that in royal lands of floating banners with all their seas of fragrant waters. At that time, when I first succeeded in the contemplation of water, I could see only water. I still had not gotten beyond my physical body. I was a bhikshu then, and once when I was in dhyana repose in my room, a disciple of mine peeked in the window and saw only pure water there, which filled the entire room. He saw nothing else. The lad was young, and not knowing any better, he picked up a tile and tossed it into the water. It hit the water with a plunk. He gazed around and then left. When I came out of concentration, I was certainly aware of a pain in my heart, and I felt like Shariputra must have felt when he met that cruel ghost. I thought to myself, I'm already an arhat, and have long since abandoned conditions that bring on illness. Why is it that today I suddenly have a pain in my heart? Am I about to lose the position of non-retreat? Just then, the young lad came promptly to me and related what had happened. I quickly said to him, when you see the water again, you may open the door, wade into the water, and remove the tile. The child was obedient, so that when I re-entered Samadhi, he again saw the water and the tile as well. He opened the door and took it out. When I came out of concentration, my body had returned to normal. I encountered limitless Buddhas and cultivated in this way until the coming of the thus come one, king of masterful penetrations of mountains and seas. Then I finally had no body. My nature and the seas of fragrant waters throughout the 10 directions were identical with true emptiness, without any duality or difference. Now I am with the thus come one, and am known as a pure youth, and I've joined the assembly of bodhisattvas. The Buddha asked about perfect penetration. By means of the nature of water, I penetrated through the flow of a single flavor, and I obtained patience with the non-existence of beings and phenomena, and the perfection of Bodhi. This is the foremost method. The Dharma Prince Vaidurya Light arose from his seat, bowed at the Buddha's feet, and said to the Buddha, I can still remember back through aeons as many as the sands in the Ganges, to the time of a Buddha named Limitless Sound, who instructed the bodhisattvas that fundamental enlightenment is wonderful and bright. He taught them to contemplate this world and all the beings in it as false conditions propelled by the power of wind. At that time, I contemplated the position of the world, and I regarded the passage of time in the world. I reflected on the movement and stillness in my body. I considered the arising of thoughts in the mind. All these kinds of movement were non-dual. They were equal and the same. I then understood that the nature of movement does not come from anywhere and does not go anywhere. Every single material particle throughout the 10 directions and every upside-down living being in it is of the same empty falseness. And so, throughout the 3,000 great thousand worlds, the living beings in each of the worlds were like so many mosquitoes confined in a trap and droning monotonously. Caught in those few square inches, their hum built to a maddening crescendo. Not long after I encountered the Buddha, I attained patience with the non-existence of beings and phenomena. My mind then opened, and I could see the country of the Buddha, unmoving in the east. I became a Dharma prince and served the Buddhas of the 10 directions. my body and mind emit a light that makes them completely clear and translucent. The Buddha asks about perfect penetration. I contemplated the power of wind as lacking anything to rely on, and I awakened to the body-mind. I entered samadhi and meshed with a single, wonderful mind transmitted by all the Buddhas of the 10 directions. This is the foremost method. Treasury of Emptiness Bodhisattva arose from his seat, bowed to the Buddha's feet and said to the Buddha, "The thus come one and I attained boundless bodies at the place of the Buddha Samadhi light. At that time, I held in my hands 4 huge precious pearls, which shone on Buddha lands as many as the motes of dust in the 10 directions, and transformed them into emptiness. In my mind, there appeared a great perfect mirror, which emitted from within 10 kinds of subtle, wonderful, precious light that poured out into the 10 directions to the furthest bounds of emptiness. All the royal lands of Banis came into the mirror and passed into my body. There was no hindrance to this interaction because my body was like emptiness. My body could enter with ease as many countries as there are fine motes of dust, and could do the Buddha's work on a wide scale, because it had become completely compliant. I achieved this great spiritual power from contemplating in detail how the 4 elements lack anything to return to, how the production and extinction of false thoughts is no different from emptiness, how all the Buddha lands are basically the same. Once I realized this identity, I obtained patience with the non-existence of beings and phenomena. The Buddha asks about perfect penetration. I used the contemplation of boundlessness of emptiness to enter samadhi and attain wonderful power and perfect clarity. This is the foremost method. Maitreya Bodhisattva arose from his seat, bowed at the Buddha's feet and said to the Buddha, "I remembered when, as many kalpas ago as there are fine motes of dust, a Buddha named Light of Sun, Moon and Lamp appeared in the world. Under that Buddha, I left the home life, yet I was deeply committed to worldly fame and liked to fraternize with people of good family. Then the world-honored one taught me to cultivate consciousness-only concentration, and I entered that samadhi. For many aeons I have made use of that samadhi, as I performed deeds for as many Buddhas as there are sands in the Ganges. My seeking for worldly name and fame ceased completely and never recurred. When Burning Lamp Buddha appeared in the world, I finally accomplished the unsurpassed, wonderfully perfect samadhi of consciousness. I went on until to the ends of emptiness. All the lands of the dust come one, whether pure or defiled, existent or non-existent, were transformations appearing from within my own mind. Well-honored one, because I understand consciousness only, thus the nature of consciousness reveals limitless thus come ones. Now I have received the prediction that I will be the next to take the Buddha's place. The Buddha asks about perfect penetration. I was intent upon the contemplation that the 10 directions come only from consciousness. When the conscious mind is perfect and bright, one enters the perfection of the real. One leaves behind reliance on others and attachment to incessant calculating, and attains the patience with the non-existence of beings and phenomena. This is the foremost method. Dharma Prince, great strength, together with 52 bodhisattvas of similar rank, arose from his seat, bowed at the Buddha's feet and said to the Buddha, "I remember when, as many aeons ago as there are sands in the Ganges, a Buddha called Limitless Light appeared in the world. In that same aeon, there were 12 successive thus come ones, The last was called light surpassing the sun and moon. That Buddha taught me the Buddha recitation samadhi. Suppose there were a person who always remembers someone else, but the someone else he remembers has entirely forgotten about him. If two such people were to meet, even if they were to see each other, they would not take notice, they would not recognize each other. If two people remember each other until the memory of each is deep, then in life after life they will be together like a form and its shadow. They will never be at odds. Out of pity for living beings, the thus come ones of the 10 directions are mindful of them, as a mother remembers her child. If the child runs away, of what use is the mother's regard? But if the child remembers his mother in the same way that the mother remembers the child, then in life after life, the mother and child will not be far apart. If living beings remember the Buddha and are mindful of the Buddha, certainly they will see the Buddha now or in the future. They will never be far from the Buddha, and their minds will awaken by themselves without the aid of expedience. A person who has been near incense will carry a fragrance on his person. It is the same in this case. It is called an adornment of fragrant light. On the causal ground, I use mindfulness of the Buddha to enter into patience with the non-existence of beings and phenomena. Now in this world, I gather in all those who are mindful of the Buddha and bring them back to the Pure Land. The Buddha asks about perfect penetration. I would select none other than gathering in the 6 organs through continuous pure mindfulness to obtain samadhi. This is the foremost method.